Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Hey, Graciela.
Hello,
You doing?
hello. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. I am super excited about today. We've got great guests lined up, and
Oh,
it's a perfect day for podcasting.
it is actually. I'm feeling I was looking at my background and my outfits today and I'm like, I look so cozy, but honestly, if you guys know us, we're in Fort Lauderdale. It's like 70, 80 degrees outside. Like there's nothing cozy about, the air conditioning. I have my AC like at 70 below, but
Oh, wait, it's what we deal with here, and it's okay. But
it's all good. Well, so what's
but
been
the
going on with
world
you?
the world out there is like getting to me again, and I think we talked about it once a little while ago, but more stuff has come up. The woman in Iran that
Mm,
was um, ultimately killed for not wearing, not being properly attired, and the morality police.
yeah.
It's like, how moral is that to kill someone for not being dressed appropriately? And then I see this post come up that like 15,000 protesters are going to be executed for protesting, which is insane. But then, like,
Insane. It's
I know
insane.
you don't believe everything that you read on the internet. So I did go investigate a little bit further. And what
Okay.
it seems like is that, yes, the Iranian government wanted that to be leaked, just kind of
Mm,
as like a show of, showing their teeth.
right.
But they're not just outright killing 15,000 protesters,
So they
but
say, I mean, right? Like if uh certain governments were able to hide the Holocaust for a couple of years, you can certainly hide 15,000 women, like
well, they have arrested these protesters, and they're not all women.
first of
What
all,
one thing that's
there must be a
one thing
camp.
that's
Like, how do you
in
keep 15,000 people under lock and key? Like, I don't
yeah,
know.
and apparently they are not being treated well. They are bruised and banged up, um and but ultimately, what I feel like, it's 2022, and how has humanity not gotten past this already? Like,
Right.
how is it possible that on parts of this planet that we live on, that parts of it women are considered less than, you know,
It's
and
it,
are
yeah.
subhuman, and that's just
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, no, it really is mind-blowing. I mean, I know we're pretty lucky to live the way that we live despite all of our flaws and how far we still have to go as Americans, right? Like there's still plenty of room to grow. Plenty. But to see that that still exists in the world, like just energetically, like what, how, this is like, I don't know, I get all in my head and I start thinking like, okay, what can we do? What can we do? And I know you and I have, talked about this, right? And I think for us, because this is what we do, have a podcast, I think talking about it is part of the solution. I think it does take everybody doing something, and maybe that something like the least something you could do would be to align yourself, right? And be your best self, and then affect those around you by being your best self, right? Like I always talk to you about my son. The other day he was asking me like 27 question about women's menstruation. Does it hurt, and how exactly does it happen, and what happens when this, and I mean, like real specific stuff, where maybe a generation ago, right, like my partner or the men in his family would never have dreamed to ask such a question. But also it's why they don't understand why we feel the way that we feel once a month, or whatever, like just it's just awareness, it's just understanding. So what blows my mind is how can you see the suffering of another human being and not have that affect you, right? Like I don't know.
We are all one, and energetically, on some level, it does affect us. And
Yeah.
um, I agree. at least starting the conversation. So we've started the conversation and it's out there. And if anybody listening to us has something of value to add, we'd
Oh
love
my
to hear
gosh.
about it.
Please. And thank you for bringing that up, Julietta, because one of the things I really want to do is continue these conversations. Like, I kind of wish we could have like a call in feature or something, but then this podcast would be like 9 hours long. But we do have the Facebook group, Voices of the Goddess podcast.
Circle of
So,
Goddesses.
right? Like,
Agreed.
that's where the conversations happen. I know that I am not the person with the most knowledge. I'm just here to like open the conversation. So if you've got something to say on this topic, like, please go in there. Let's talk. Let's, hash it out. Who knows, if we get enough interest, we can even do like, I love myself a wine night. We could even do like a, nighttime chit chat, where everybody kind of hops on, and we do find a way of taking, a couple of live guests and things like that. So that could be interesting.
Awesome.
But at the end of the day, to move the needle forward, I think it's awareness. I think it's putting good energy in that direction, and, doing whatever is in your area of expertise, right? If you're a frontline protester, go be a frontline protester. If you're an artist, go make your art. If you're a singer, go do your song. Like, I think all of these things collectively push forward, and we can't be everything. So be your best self, really. I don't know. But yes, I'm holding space for that because that's very, very upsetting.
All right. Let's shit.
Sorry.
Enough sad topic. Let's bring on our guests for today. All right.
Yes. Let's bring on our guest.
Hi, Rama.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello, welcome.
All good. We're excited that you're here joining us today. And what we'd really love is if you take a moment and introduce yourself to our audience. Tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here with you beautiful women and your audience. I'd just like to say, like, this discussion that you're holding space for is so key and important. And it's something I lean on in my offerings quite a lot, is like, there's so much happening on the planet in these times. And I think the best thing we can all do is exactly what Graciela was saying, like, just, do your art, do your passions. I mean, it's something I've been sharing in my work for years, is like, what is your value system, and is your life aligned with that? And if each one of us really lives our lives from an extension of what our values are, we will change the world so fast, in lightning speed. So I loved that what got opened here, because I know it can be heavy, especially as women. It's kind of like, how are we still dealing with the same old stories? And we are 2022. It's a polarity planet. So
I appreciate you saying that so much. Julietta always says, if everyone would just love themselves, the planet would be cured.
Yeah.
Really, like, just that one thing. Just if you truly loved am I saying it right, Julietta? If you just truly loved and integrated your whole self, that would be enough. If everybody did that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm all about that for sure. So thank you for having me here. And my work is, I'm an artist and an alchemical astrologer, a cosmic high priestess. And I've been working with herbalism and stone medicine, and I've been leading pilgrimages since 2017. And I'm also a yogic scientist and sound healer. So in my work, I'm just all about helping people align with their soul purpose, mostly through the art and science of astrology, but through other paths as well, through a mystery school and the pilgrimages that I have the great honor of leading, which are a dear passion to me and kind of like an extension of my artistic expression, because I studied studio art in college and always thought, oh, I might, be like an actual production artist in the world. But my art has become more like an experiential offering and installation art on the land.
How beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice.
So with what you do, you must have a million stories. Give us one like really great success story. Like what keeps you passionate about what you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'll be honest, like what I do, it can sound amazing, but it's not always easy work, especially I think the pilgrimage work, because um, it's such a labor of love. Excuse me. And every time I create a new pilgrimage, each one has its own unique identity. And so I would say witnessing other women go through their transformation. One woman in particular, it was actually the first pilgrimage I ever led to Avalon, Glastonbury in the UK. And she had decided she was going to stop taking her bipolar medication like 4 days before the pilgrimage.
Wow.
And so she was having like this total meltdown moment. But like before the pilgrimage even started, she came to Glastonbury early and I did as well. And so I was connecting with her and kind of, mentoring her through the process of it's really normal when we're about to go into a container of deep alchemical transformation. It's normal to want to just say, F this, like I'm out, like I'm not up for this. And yeah, so we kind of processed and she agreed to stay. And then it was quite a long pilgrimage. It was about almost 18 days. And we were there for the total solar eclipse in 2017, which was not visible in the UK. It was visible here in the US. And it was the morning we were going to Stonehenge, and she had decided that like she had gotten exposed to mad cow disease in a field because it had cow dung. And she was like, it's all your fault. You made us do ritual with the cow dung. And I was like, no one forced you to do anything. And, we were sitting in a field and we were doing sacred work and you're protected. And I know you're fine. And we're about to go to Stonehenge and we've all got to get on the bus right now. And I'm going to be up there. And if you want to come, like, I think it would be fabulous. I don't think you want to miss this. But if you feel like you need to like back out of the pilgrimage, we can discuss this later in the day. And it was just like, for me, it was such a hard moment to hold that field for her. But she ended up getting on the bus and we all went to Stonehenge, and it was a beautiful day. And she really taught me a lot. She taught me a lot about like being fierce and being able to hold the line. Even when there are forces that kind of want to push you away from that. And I'm not saying she wanted to, but her own fear of like transformation did. And in hindsight, she gave me one of the best testimonials, and like she was really transformed through the journey. And so, it's challenging work, but it's also super rewarding to see other women really meet themselves in some of their darkest, most shadowy spaces, and just to witness them, because really they're all doing their own inner work. I'm just kind of the anchor holding that space for it.
And I say that all the time. I'm a physical therapist. I help people heal, but I don't actually heal anybody. Only they can heal themselves. And whatever modality you're doing that through, it's always the individual that's doing the healing.
Yes.
We as healers are just facilitators. And
Absolutely.
When I see people who don't recognize that, and they're stuck in their ego and thinking, oh, look at what I'm doing. No, you have to be strong and brave and goddess-like to tap into that energy, to hold that space, because like kudos to you for taking on such a big challenge on your first guided pilgrimage. Like that's awesome. And yeah, our difficult times are what are our greatest teachers, and
Mhm.
it all came together.
It really is amazing, right? Because no matter what the journey is, you're right. It's you always feel like, man, I don't know about this. Like right when it's about to get good, right? Like and it's like whether it's what Julietta does or what you do, Rama, or even in my photography studio, there's always like a climax. There's always a
Mhm.
crescendo where it's like, oh my gosh, this is this most terrible thing. Like, let me just hold my breath. I don't know what's gonna happen. And then all of a sudden you're like, whoo, open my sight.
Totally.
I'm amazing, right? Like just this like starburst and sunshine and rainbows and unicorns.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. And it's so powerful. And yet every single time, no matter how many stories we tell, we all have to be convinced that it's gonna be okay.
Totally. Yeah. And I've at this point I've led 7 pilgrimages, and every time before the next one, I was telling my daughter this recently. I'm like, every time I doubt myself and I question, like, can I do this? And I think it's just a natural process of being a creator. And I think that it's important to discuss this, when we've had success in our lives, to be able to own the fact that we still question our abilities and can we do this and are we crazy? I think everyone goes through it, but some people think that they should have it all figured out, or that they're not going to have fear. And fear is a huge part of the alchemical process, because it gives us information that we need to kind of take things to the next level.
Yeah. I think
Absolutely.
I think part of it is that we are energy beings having that human experience, and so we still have to deal with the brain as an access point, right? To be able
Mhm.
to get to all the places we want to go. And Juliet, I know we've talked about this before on the show, but the concept of the reptilian brain, how your brain is always trying to keep you alive, right? Its sole purpose is to continue to procreate and just keep your body alive. And so I think when hard things are coming up, that fear is just a safety mechanism, and
Mhm.
it's almost like we have to talk to our brain and say, no, man, it's okay. Like, we're going to do this. You'll see, like, trust me,
Yeah.
my gut's talking to my brain, right? Like, I don't know where all these things reside, but there's definitely more than one person up here for sure.
Yeah.
And we don't know how many people are up here, but so our show is all about, women supporting women and empowering each other. So one of the things we like to know is, what's one piece of advice you got from another woman that changed your life?
Oh, it's always so hard for me to pick the one
It doesn't have to
thing.
be the one. It can just be anyone.
Although this does seem to be a sticking point with our guests. We may have to reword that question at some
Yeah.
point. It seems to create a bit of pressure.
Um, well, what comes alive for me in this moment is just being in the presence of this sacred sound artist, Shauna Carroll. And she's actually the first person that I traveled to Glastonbury, Avalon with in 2003. And I went on this pilgrimage with her and I think it was about 30 people. And we were doing sacred chant throughout the pilgrimage. And what I learned in that experience, I was 23 at the time. And what I learned was, like, for one, how deeply I had shut my voice down. And she had this method of where we would go out onto different sacred sites, and we would have this ability to really find our natural song and allow it to sing through us. And it was deep work for me, and really hard. Like, this was some of the deepest work I had to do, and I processed so much on that journey, and it just being in her kind of auric field. And it's interesting because I don't talk about that very much, and it's recently kind of come back alive in the last month. Um, so yeah, it just feels appropriate to honor her, because she did transition to the other world a couple years ago. And when we were there in Avalon, she was definitely struggling with, I think it was some kind of cancer. She didn't speak about it in the group, but there were things I kind of picked up on. And so just as a honoring to her life, Shauna Carroll, because she has some beautiful sacred chant music that I think your audience would like as well. But her message was really that we all have our own unique song, and how do you claim that, and how do you let your voice come through? Which, you know, what you all were discussing at the beginning of this show today, and what's going on in Iran, and for women all over the world, we're still reclaiming our voice collectively. You know, there's a lot of energy out there that wants to silence us and continue to persecute the feminine. So this voice piece, I think, is a real key part for the reclamation of the feminine in these times.
I love that so much. And thank you for sharing that. You know, one of the processes that I love to overanalyze, because I overanalyze everything, is how as young girls, we are so free. And then at some point, usually around adolescence, we start quieting ourselves down and making ourselves smaller. I mean, there's books and books on this topic. And then all of a sudden, like in your 20s and 30s, right, you're like, wait a minute, where was I was doing something really important. I was being myself. And all of a sudden I'm not. Like, what happened? You know? I think it's really powerful that you got to have that experience in your early 20s. That's really such a blessing. How amazing is that in all the history of all mankind, you got to be here at the same time as her, right? Like that's really amazing. And for sharing that, can you spell her name for me? Like, I'm totally put this in the show notes.
Yeah. SHAWN, Shauna. Oh, A, and an A, and then Carol, CAROL.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
I hate to ask you yet another one, but
it's okay. I'm all good. I can handle it. It's just, I'm a Gemini. I'm like 29th degree Gemini. So I'm at the karmic completion of Gemini energy. And so I can never just pick one of anything, because I'm so, you know, into multiple realms all at once.
I totally get it. I have, so I'm an old, not old, but I am a former brief English teacher, and I absolutely love books. I probably have about 3,000 books at home.
A woman after my own heart. I love books too.
It's actually kind of neat because I've run out of bookshelf space, and now I'm getting to like that, you know, eccentric collector part of my life where I just have to pile them up in like cool corners, and you know, it's less space to vacuum, so it's exciting. But give me a book to add to my collection. I mean, I know you've got a lot, I'm sure, under your belt, but just give us one.
Okay, well, I have one here for you, and I don't think it's going to be on your list. We'll see. This is actually an art book. It's Hilma af Klint's Paintings for the Future. Has anyone brought this one up on the show?
Absolutely not.
Awesome. So I wanted to share this because I was really, you know, feeling into, if I was to recommend one book, people ask me about this all the time in my work. Like when they come for astrology sessions, they're always like, what's the one book I can read? And I'm like, it doesn't exist. I'm sorry. But, you know, it's just, anyways, so I wanted to bring forth Hilma af Klint's work because she is such an amazing painter. She was an artist, and she came into kind of her peak in the early 1900s, a Swedish artist. And no one really knew about her work until about 30 years after her death. Wow. And this is one of my favorite paintings of all time here at the work. I'm trying to like stabilize it. Okay, there we go. And it's actually part of a triptych. So there's 3 separate paintings that create one. And basically Hilma, she kind of would do these seances with a group of female friends, and they would channel these beings, and these beings gave this directive of this whole body of work that needed to be created, and Hilma created it, and it's called Paintings for the Future. So this book speaks to the body of work, and she actually created this whole field of abstract expressionism, but never got the credit. You know, it was actually men who got the credit, as we see again and again in the art world and in so many other capacities of life. Her story is just so incredibly fascinating, and there's some really beautiful documentaries out there as well about her work. But I really feel like these paintings are time coded for us in this time we're living in now. So I love to share about her work, especially in deep feminine spaces.
Love that. Yes, something very new for our audience to look at. Definitely has not been touched on before. So thank you for bringing that to our awareness.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. Our next question is, we all, to move forward and grow, we need to take risks and try things that maybe we're not so certain about doing in the moment, but we do them anyway. So what is that one risk that you've taken that you will never regret having chosen to do so?
Yeah, I think that would be starting to bring my pilgrimage work to Egypt, which was a massive risk and really slightly terrifying for me, because Egypt is like next level in the sense of the energy that's there and that's available to you, but also it is the land of magic. And I think as we consider, some of the things you were discussing at the beginning of the show and the story of woman, there's a lot of kind of, I like to call them forces of adversity that's a term I learned from my mentor, Elder Malidoma Somé, who crossed over to the other world last year in December. And he would talk a lot about these forces of adversity in a way so that we're not afraid of them, but we're aware of them. And we understand that they actually help us to grow as humans. And Egypt has a lot of forces of adversity that want to keep us from really expanding our consciousness in these times. And so, bringing my first group there felt like a massive stretch of the nervous system, and then continuing to do the work, even in 2020 and 2021 and this year 2022, continuing to bring people there has felt very scary, but also so deeply rewarding, because the kind of transformation one can experience in Egypt, it's like next level. I believe it's like kind of like, I don't know if this might be too out there for you all. I don't think so, but we'll see. I kind of consider Egypt like it's the hub of not just energy through Earth, but through the galaxies. It is like a stargate for us here on the Earth. And there's a lot of energies, like when you're in the temples or you're in the pyramids, you're not just dealing with Earth-based frequencies. You have to navigate so many different cosmic energies as well. So it requires very skilled discernment, which fortunately, continue to learn as I go, because these are things we haven't really been taught in this day and age. We're kind of reclaiming our priestess and priest skills and abilities from many other previous incarnations, we could say.
Yeah, I've been twice to Egypt now, and it just keeps calling you back over and over.
Yeah.
And we could do a whole show on my experiences over there. And yeah, for some people, it would be too much if I told them like what I experienced there. So I absolutely agree with everything that you've said. And, people go, is it safe to go over there? Why would you want to go over there again? And I'm like, if you've been there and you've experienced it, you'll understand.
Yeah.
And totally agree with it. there's a lot of connection to other worlds and dimensions there. And it's, you have to be in the right space to be open to experiencing that as well. So
absolutely. Yeah. You want to go when Egypt calls you, not when you think you need to go.
I love that you guys brought up Egypt and drama. When you were talking, I was like, oh, this is Julietta's language. Like what I'm hearing from you, I've heard from her. And I think my takeaway listening to you two is to really get the most out of Egypt, probably go with a guide, go with a group, right? Go with someone that can help you transition through these things. Yes.
Absolutely. And don't just go with any guide or any group. Be like so discerning about who that group is, like who is facilitating it, who is the Egyptian on the other end, because you just never know what you're stepping into. And I've definitely heard a lot of accounts that I'm grateful that that was not my experience or my community's experience as well.
I was also going to say, you probably don't know because you can't see it from here, but Graciela has on a mala with an Egyptian scarab. So when I go, I buy amulets and stuff there, and then I make malas.
Oh, that one's so beautiful.
And so before the show, Graciela was telling me like how much this mala has helped her manifest abundance in her career. And it's like the energy that comes from Egypt and the energy that's in these amulets, because they're not just, anybody could make a scarab anywhere, but the stuff that I use was created in Egypt and carries the energy of Egypt.
Totally. I can see that. Yeah.
So it's,
and it looks like it's alabaster. Is it alabaster?
That one? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is a form of quartz for people who don't know.
So there's, I've made quite a few of these malas, and the stories that come back from people after they've been wearing them, they're like, holy cow.
I love that.
I told you they're full of energy. So when you acquire one, just be prepared for what it's going to bring.
Totally.
But it's because of Egypt and the energy that's there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd like to say just one more thing about Egypt, because I think that sometimes people associate it so much with ancient history, and they're kind of like, well, what does that have to do with us now, today? And honestly, I feel like it's kind of like Hilma af Klint's paintings for the future. I feel like those temples, the pyramids, were created on some level for us in these times of like a sacred remembrance in our awakening and all that we're going through. And Egypt is very relevant for us in these times today. And I think that that's something that is important to say about, traveling in that sacred space.
I appreciate that. And I think that things that are universally true endure,
Yeah, exactly.
There's a reason that these things have lasted. There's a reason that everything lines up the way that it does, whether we understand it or what was that one movie? Do you remember City of Angels? The Nicolas Cage character, he's like, some things are true, whether you believe them or not, Yeah. And, like even with these malas, even if you just look at them like, oh, they're so pretty, they match my outfit, it's still choosing you. It's still, like sometimes like I want to be really intentional when I select what am I going to wear today, but I can never remember what each one, like what each bead represents, what it's for. I'm like, you know what? I just go with this is the one that's calling on me today. And that's it. And I'm never wrong. And it's never the wrong thing. And, it always works out exactly the way that it's supposed to. But I love this Egypt conversation. It's on my bucket list. It's a very long list.
I'm sure it is.
Well, now I can never go without Julietta. That's for sure. So
yeah, you got to go with your sister.
Absolutely. Well, last question, and we don't want to keep you too long because we could absolutely do this for the next 4 hours.
Yeah.
So one of the missions of our podcast, honestly, is just to create a little well of joy and inspiration. And so when we sat down devising our questions for our guests, this very last one is one of my favorites. And I chose the wording. That's going to come over well on a podcast. Blah blah blah. The wording very particularly because I wanted to evoke something. So the question is, what is your sweetest and most delicious memory? Like, again, put something in my cauldron. Like, what can I bake in there to feel good?
When I began the first incarnation of my business, it was called the Conscious Canopy, and I was a birth and postpartum doula and a childbirth educator, and really worked deeply with new parents and parents to be. And then I found myself pregnant, and I ended up gratefully being able to give birth at home to my daughter. And the moment of her birth and the awe of like looking at her face the first time and being able to give birth to her in my bed and just bring her up into my arms, and the beauty of that situation, the beauty of that moment. One of the things when a woman is able to give birth free of medical interventions, we could say, there's a whole natural cascade of hormones that a woman experiences. And I knew about the hormones because I'd been studying them for years. But to feel them and to feel that immediate bonding with my daughter, and just to look at her face and how ancient she looked when she first came out. And I literally could not close my eyes for the first 48 hours. Every time I would close them for like 2 minutes, and then I would open them and look at her, and I couldn't stop staring at her.
Wow.
She was just so beautiful, and just being able to be the channel for what she came through on this earth, and the bond we've created and the experiences. But that moment of her birth was just so incredibly empowering and mystical and deeply awe-inspiring.
That's amazing. There's an Instagram account called Free Birth Society. Have you ever seen it?
I don't think I've seen that one. Yeah.
Just look up free birthing. It might be Free Birthing Society, but it's raw videos of natural childbirth. And I tell you, like, even though it's only a 1-minute clip, I cry every birth.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, of course.
Every single time. And, you know, Julietta always says we are one. And I think those experiences, like you sharing your experience, allows me to live your experience. It really does. How old is your daughter now?
She's 11, almost 12. She'll be 12 in January.
Beautiful. Yeah. I have 13-year-old twins.
Oh, wow.
And very long story, but short. They were a C-section.
Yeah.
And how do I say this? Like, part of me feels like maybe I missed out on something, but then you're telling stories, like, you know, when I see those videos and when I hear moms telling those stories, like, it fills me up too. Do you know what I mean? Like, it gives me the experience that I didn't get, that fills in the blanks. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I want to say, you know, one of the things I always would share with my clients, and continue to this day, even though I'm not an active doula, is that it's a cesarean birth. You know, it is a birth.
Yes.
And you gave birth to your twins, you know, like you did it, even though you needed support and different interventions, it was a birth. And I think that's super important for our psyches to hear that.
Beautiful.
Yummy, yummy.
Thank you so much for having me with you too. It's been amazing to connect.
It has been a great show, and thank you so much. You've shared a ton of juicy nuggets for our audience to soak in. So thank you for bringing that today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Amazing. And I'm going to have to connect with you a little bit more. I want to hear more about the North Carolina life. You can see I have no South Florida background. I
see that.
In my head, I'm cozy by a fire,
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Time for us to go. Take care,
is.
everyone.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.